I think that the Washington Huskies are the best team in the Pac-12 going into this season, man. Year one under Kalen DeBoer, these boys went 11-2. They had Micheal Penix. Micheal Penix, out of all people, was having a fantastic season. The Pac-12 was the quarterback rehabilitation conference. First, we had Bo Nix going from Auburn, the Oregon playing at a Heisman level, and then we had Micheal Penix, dog. Micheal Penix. Now, to his credit, Micheal Penix, in my opinion, was never really a bad QB. The brother just couldn't stay healthy. All of a sudden, Kalen DeBoer gets his hands on Micheal Penix, and this dude turns glitter to gold. Micheal Penix, this dude can really throw that damn rock. I remember it was 2 a.m., 3 a.m. in the morning. I was in my college dorm watching the Washington Huskies play Oregon State. And 30 to 45 mile per hour winds. And this dude, Micheal Penix, threw an absolutely beautiful dime against Oregon State, who was running a cover 2 defense that play. Not only that, but they have the best wide receiving core in this conference, probably the second best receiving core in all of college football, behind Ohio State. They returned 74% of their offensive production from last year. They returned 73% of their production on defense from last year. Now, their offensive line, despite having 3 new starters on their 2 offensive guard positions in that center, still should be really good. Now, I don't think they're going to be as good as what they were last year, only allowing 7 sacks, but I do think that this is still going to be amongst the nation's best offensive lines, with the fact that they have 2 really good offensive tackles who should be playing on Sunday. Your running back position should be pretty good as well. When it comes to Washington being able to win the Pac-12 this year, it's really going to come down to the improvement that they make on defense. And I believe that their defense is going to improve, because there are a lot of teams in this conference who are going to be competing for the conference championship who didn't really play great defense. The 2 best defensive teams in this conference last year were Washington State and Oregon State. For Washington, you don't need your defense to be amongst the best in college football. You just need your defense to get a damn stop every once in a while. They have a fantastic defensive line that returns a lot of experience and a lot of talent. There are 2 guys who are going to be projected first-round picks going into next year's draft, in particular, Braylon Trice, who led the team with 10 sacks. Now, there's another guy on this defensive line, and Husky fans, you guys already know who I'm talking about. I'm just not going to try to pronounce his name because it's way too damn difficult to pronounce. But the Huskies have some real dogs on this defensive line. This is probably, if not the best defensive line, one of the best in this conference. And our linebacker, many coaches on this coaching staff believe that this is probably the most talented that this linebacker room has been in recent memory. Your main concern about this defense doesn't really lie with the front 7, but it really lies on the back end of this secondary. This cornerback position was not good last year. They got a lot of help in the transfer portal. They brought in Jabbar Muhammad from Oklahoma State, who is one of the best cornerbacks in the Big 12. You know, in the Big 12, them boys air that football out. So he's going to come, he's going to have an immediate impact on this defense. They got experience at safety. So I think their cornerback position should be much better this season than what it was last year. And I expect this defense to improve. I don't think that this past defense can get any worse than what the hell it was last year. And I know people say, JT, things can always get worse. No, dog. No. This defense, when it came to stopping the pass, was non-existent. This offense had no choice but to be one of the best offenses in college football, because they knew if they didn't win the game, the defense damn sure as hell wasn't going to help them win the game. And there were plenty of times where you probably was hoping that the defense wasn't on the field and had to close out the game for you. Their defense was so bad that you probably had to rely on your offense to be able to close games out for you. For Washington, I think their defense this year is going to be the difference why they're going to be able to win the Pac-12. And when you look at their schedule, it's not that difficult. They play Boise State, Tulsa. They got to go on the road and play Michigan State. They play Cal, Arizona State. They should be 5-0 going into their bye week before they play Oregon. And they get to play Oregon coming off a bye at home. So there's a large possibility that they could be 6-0. Then they play Arizona State. They could be 7-0. They got to go on the road and play Stanford, who's going to be terrible this year, 8-0. And then that's when Washington gets into the meat and potatoes of their conference schedule. They got to go on the road and play USC and Caleb Williams. Then they got to play Utah, but you get them at home. They got to play Oregon State on the road. Then Washington State in the Apple Cup to close the season. But for Washington, though, if they could get out of that last stretch of their schedule with only one loss, they're going to be in position to not only be in the Pac-12 championships, which they most likely will, but they also are going to have a chance at being able to make it into the college football playoffs. This is one of the most talented rosters in college football. Maybe not by recruiting rankings. If you go and you look at 247 Sports Team Talent Composite rankings, they're probably not going to be up there in that category. But when you look at guys from an NFL standpoint, like the guys they have at receiver, on the offensive line, and on the defensive line, there's going to be a lot of guys on this team who are going to be hearing their name called come next season. When it comes to teams in the Pac-12 that have the most NFL talent on their roster, I think that Washington is number one. The Huskies this year, I'm picking them to win the Pac-12, man. I think at worst, they have one loss, maybe two, and I still think that'll be good enough to get them into the Pac-12 championship game because, oddly enough, they didn't make it into the Pac-12 championship last year because of a weird tiebreaker. I don't know why the hell they weren't in the Pac-12 championship, but I would have loved to see Washington play USC last year. That would have been a fantastic game. You would have had nothing but offense, no defense. And I still think that what makes Washington my pick to win the Pac-12 is that I think their defense is going to be better than USC's. I think their defense is possibly going to be the second best in this conference behind Oregon State, Utah, whoever else you think is going to have a better defense than Washington. But it's not like Washington needs a elite defense to win. They just need a defense that can get key stops. This offense is still going to be able to put a lot of points on the board against you. They retained their offensive coordinator. They have a really solid offensive line. When you look at their tackle spots, your only concern is going to be the interior of their offensive line. I think they're going to be pretty set there. They like the guys who they have up front this season. I think that the Washington Huskies are going to win the Pac-12 this season. I think that this is either the second or the most talented team in the Pac-12. And I think with one loss, they will be good enough to get into the college football playoffs. That's why I'm picking the Washington Huskies to win the Pac-12 this season, man. I love this conference, man. Do y'all not love the Pac-12? Like, I was really up at 3 a.m. in the morning watching these boys play against Oregon State, fam. The Pac-12 is probably my favorite conference this year going into the 2023 college football season, man. There were a lot of great stories. Micheal Penix is a legitimate Heisman contender. With another great season, he can end up hearing his name called. That's why you love the transfer portal, people.